Buenas tardes, ladies and gentlemen. Sí, soy yo, tu conservative New Yorker, Peter Vasquez, aquí in the WISL studios, como every day. Hey, I hope you're having a wonderful second day of the week, a wonderful Tuesday. Listen, there's only what, like, oh man, I lost count already. There's like just about just over 30 days before election, ladies and gentlemen, on November 5th. And I believe that if you did the whole early voting thing, or not the early voting, the mail. I guess you can ask, for your votes by mail. That I mean, those have started being mailing out, so people are already voting. So look, ladies and gentlemen, November 5th, you've got your left guys and your right guys and your middle guys, and we're all on the ballot. Please take the time to look at each individual candidate and make sure that you're voting informed. Now, obviously, in my case, I want you to vote for Peter Vasquez from Monroe County Clerk. But listen, do your due diligence, okay? Seriously, our city is in a crisis. I mean, check this out. I ran across an article, yeah? um, okay, I'm just chuckling. Not that this is a serious matter. So I ran across this article, and I shouldn't chuckle. The name threw me off. But this is the kind of situation that we're in. I mean, we talk about childhood poverty. We talk about poverty in general. We talk about all just the economy not being great. People are struggling. I saw a meme the other day from a guy that said that with age he's gotten much more stronger because now he can carry $100 worth of groceries. I thought that was pretty funny because once upon a time $100 worth of groceries was more than just one bag. However, this article that I found talks about another critical issue here, which is youth period poverty, right? Let me say that again in case you missed it. Youth period poverty. Now, as we're preparing, as the governor said, we're preparing for the strike, which we're going to look at here for, well, we'll probably look at it at some point during the show. But anyways, hopefully this strike doesn't contribute to youth period poverty. But let's look at that real quick since I brought it up. The American Academy of Pediatrics in 2024 at the national conference, their focus was that issue of youth period poverty. And it refers to the difficulty of many adolescents facing access to ministerial products and related education. You're right. I'm a guy. What do I know about this? Although this article and this study doesn't really refer to women, it refers to individuals that menstruate, that have periods. So I mean, I always thought that was just women, but what do I know? Um, the study overview shows that Children's National Hospital found that 1 in 3 adolescents who visited pediatric emergency departments had issues with obtaining menstrual products. This was collected through a teen health screen survey. Um, I mean, this is just like amazing stuff to me. Listen, if I brought it up in the show, it's because I thought it was pretty amazing. And this is critical, guys. I'm not making light of it. There were 2 questions that this survey asked. One of them was this is the survey that they asked in the teen health screen survey. That's what it's called. 2 specific questions were asked. In the past 12 months, have you ever had to use alternative to pads or tampons, such as a cloth, rag, tissue, or toilet paper due to the lack of access? And question number 2 is, have you needed menstrual products but were unable to afford them? So the findings, the study found that approximately 30% of adolescents face period poverty. That's a lot of people, right? Recommendations that this study made was free menstrual hygiene products to be available in emergency room departments, bathrooms, and other healthcare. Okay. The policy, it also recommends a policy change, right? This is for you legislators that are listening, to reduce the cost of menstrual products and ensuring their free availability in public places. Now, again, this isn't an issue that I've dealt with, but I do have daughters, and I have a wife and a mother-in-law and 3 mothers. Although my mother's, I don't think, deal with this stuff anymore. So, this was something that, that I've always grown up and seen happen. I have sisters, right? I mean, we were poor. We were poor. So check it out, ladies and gentlemen. There are organizations out there like Hope Dealers. It's Hope Dealers, btc.org, I believe it is. Hope Dealers Be the Change. Just Google them. Listen, this is a real thing, right? Check this out. Excuse me, nearly 1 in 4 teenagers in the United States have reported difficulties affording them, and approximately 37 of those who menstruate in the U.S. have struggled to afford it. So, Hope Dealers, listen, they every Sunday morning between 10 and 12, right there on Clinton Avenue. And I know that they're working on their own location because they're sharing it with another great organization, the Latino Youth Development Corporation. But look, man, help out these young people. Let's see, because I think that this particular poverty issue, we can fix ourselves. I mean, for the cost of it, I suggest this, right? This is what I recommend. If every one of our listeners went out and bought one package of something, and gentlemen, I mean, unless you've got experience, I would definitely suggest you have your spouses do that, or ask questions at the stores. And let's just get these to all the homeless shelters. Let's get this to all those places that feed the homeless and help. Let's make sure. Because we should never see something with the words youth and poverty in it. And we surely in 2024 should not see something or the words youth period poverty. Man, I thought white Hispanic was an interesting term, but youth period poverty, that's a new one for me. Check this out. 78% of teenagers in this same survey believe that menstrual health should be part of the core educational curriculum. Ladies and gentlemen, 346-3000, Si Soy Yo to Conservative New Yorican, here again with you on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon, having lunch with you. One of the things we're going to talk about today is rent, and please don't mind the paper shuffling here. But I do housing, and I'm not going to get into much of what I do, because what I want to talk about is good cause evictions, right? Again, another article that we went through. I thought it was a phenomenal article, actually. It was on I think it was in the Business Journal, the Rochester Business Journal. It was written by, I think, Bob Duffy. He was talking about the pros and cons, because there are slumlords out there. There are landlords out there that, listen, they really shouldn't be landlords. And I'm sorry, like any business, if you don't have a heart for what you do, then you just simply don't have a heart. But, like always, the state in their very overarching methods, right, decide that they're going to create this very confusing law for a situation that's already confusing in most parts of the country. And then, of course, without really thinking things through, they create this whole thing of good cause evictions, right? And, good cause evictions isn't a great thing. And the thing is this, when we have a situation where we already have a limited amount of inventory of housing, why would we start putting policies in place that do nothing but inhibit the growth and development of more types of housing? Why would we not want investors to say, I'm going to buy this house? Why would we want more government types of housing? I mean, listen, I do my best to provide some of the most quality, supportive types of housing for people in their worst to try to make their way into their next steps. But boy, I'll tell you, I strive hard to make sure that the units that we provide are clean and in a place that we can say, that's my home. But ladies and gentlemen, I know many of you have walked by, have even lived in some of these subsidized housing units that are out there. And listen, I'm sorry, but they do not in any way, shape, or form, well, in large part, really indicate a place that somebody would say, esa es mi casa. See, that's where I lay my head, and I'm proud of it because listen, between the investment, the rodents and roaches and just downright dirty because the money's just isn't being put into it for the maintenance. See, I've been doing this whole housing thing long enough that again, this whole housing thing, it's a whole nother trickery. Oh, what do I mean by that? Well, the thing is this: a tenant who moves into these kinds of housings, right? And because these are all income based, right? Really restricts the individual from moving forward. So if we say that rent's a burden and we have a homeless individual let's say, and we're going to look at these numbers here in a minute, somebody from a DV, a domestic violence situation, he or her, right, left the house, just needed to go like immediately. And now they're seeking help, they're trying to get into a homeless shelter, they have no money because the abuser, and then all of a sudden, they start working a little bit, they start getting on their own 2 feet, thinking that, man, all this help is going to help me put me on my feet. But yet they've got 2 little girls in daycare, and they go and they put their kids in daycare, and they got all this help, and they're like, okay, I am ready to move into more of an independent house. I make more money. I make just enough, but I do make more money where I can probably afford a little bit more in rent. And then poof, they go and they try to do it. And then because they got a raise that made them feel good at work because they're working hard, all of a sudden they lose daycare and they're still stuck in this affordable housing because they can't afford to live anything else. And guess what? That's where we start seeing the lack of hope in many of these places. So let's look at this here real quick, right? Good cause eviction proposal. It's not a statewide law, for example, where the law says you will do this right now. I think Hocus Pocus knows better. Not to mention, I'm sure many of her colleagues there in Albany own a lot of property, and they're like, whoa, hold your horses. But Rochester, New York, right, is surely one of those cities that are considering adopting this good cause eviction as the law states, because that's kind of where the law is right now, right? What does it do? Well, it's referred to as good cause because basically what it says is that landlords can't evict someone um, unless they have what the state deems a legitimate reason, right? And they can't even They can't even refuse to renew the lease. Mira, this is the United States of America. Entrepreneurship always prevails with a good heart. We'll be right back right here in the Next Step Show. No te vayas on Facebook. I'll be right back. CWYSL. We have Rock Auto Services. See, tenemos a Flower City Collision and East Henrietta, both Rock Auto, Flower City, owned by veterans. And let's not forget the Coalition to Protect Kids New York. Hey, in case you didn't know, check this out. Over 200 billion cups of coffees are consumed every day across the globe. And if you didn't realize it, what I'm trying to tell you, it is International Coffee Day. Yeah, hey, check it out. I drink a lot of coffee. Studies suggest, though, that regular coffee consumption can reduce the risk of diseases such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer by about 65%. And moderate coffee drinkers, that's 3 to 4 cups a day, tend to have 10% lower risk of developing heart disease compared to non-coffee drinkers. But I'll tell you, based on those statistics, I ain't never gonna die, I guess. I ain't never gonna have a heart attack or have of those because I drink enough coffee to take me to keep me awake for a week. But I do love coffee, especially ese café bustelo, brewed nice and hot. Or the 3 p.m., although I haven't had time for these lately. But that 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. cafecito, I miss those days with my dad, I'll tell you. 346-3000, ladies and gentlemen. 346-3000. I say I'm a lot, don't I? Valerie, Valerie, thank you for listening on social media. She says she's listening in her car. Thank you very much. So I was talking about good cause evictions, right? And the thing is this, when you see words on these things, remember I talked about trickery. You got to read the words. It's about trickery. Refusing to renew the lease. So as a landlord in New York State, if this becomes adopted in your area, these are the kind of things you're going to contend with. Now, people say, oh, listen, good cause eviction, that's not a big deal. You can still evict people for non-payment or the violation of lease terms or situations where the landlord intends to move into the property or significantly renovate it. Substantially, not significantly. Words are important, right? But what gets me is I think we're missing a point here. The whole concept of my house, hey, I bought this, right? I mean, look, to me, this is no different than someone walking into a grocery store, filling up their carts with food and walking out and saying, well, I simply think you're just charging too much. So I'm either not going to pay for it or I'm going to pay just this amount of money. Or go through and say, you know what, I just don't like the look of your store. I mean, 346-3000. If you own property, let me know. I'm curious, right? Because these are the things that we see out there that doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? They set limits. This good cause eviction sets limits in the amount of rent that can be increased every year, where landlords would not be able to raise their rents, but what they call unreasonable amounts, right? Rent increases beyond a threshold, which is usually around 5%, could be considered a form of de facto eviction. So if I'm planning on doing a roof repair, which isn't really a substantial renovation, so I can't evict them under this or anything like that, but I got to raise the rents, right? Because that's going to increase the value of the property. It's going to cost me money. It's going to make it better for them. It's going to be more efficient. What are we? And then this is the part that gets me. A landlord cannot refuse or renew a lease without good reason. It prevents landlords from simply not renewing the leases for the tenants that they no longer wish to rent to. So if you and I have been having issues, if you know what, if I simply just don't like you, right? If you just simply are just one of those people that you break the lease, but to that point where that I can't really evict you because, well, under this stuff, judges get a little concerned sometimes. So 3 days a week you're blaring music, other neighbors are complaining, but 2 days you don't, the complications. And I'm just like, you know what, listen, I'm not going to evict you, but I think after this year's lease you should probably find your own place. You can't do that. But we do have a housing crisis in this state, and what gets me is that good cause eviction, it does what the state always does. It takes this one size fits all concept and says, bam, that's what you're going to do. Kind of like they do with the Second Amendment, right? You've got criminals out there, but there are no laws really to address the criminal activity. So they go after the legal gun owners because it looks good, it sounds good, right? And the same thing with tenants now. Same thing with housing. Check this out, right? There was a Stanford study. It was done by Stanford University, right? That shows the effects of rent control in San Francisco. And it found that rent control, which is what this good cause eviction is, led to a 15% reduction in the supply of rental units. Guess what? Landlords, most likely good landlords, I have to assume, they converted those units to condominiums and other forms of ownership to avoid these regulations. I mean, I don't want to sound like, oh my gosh, Peter, you can't stand help. I mean, listen, I do this for a living and it kills me because finding partners in municipalities even to kind of come on and buy on to some of these initiatives that we're trying to do gets hard because of ridiculousness like this, especially because it is convoluted, especially because the wording is so vague that it really doesn't make it. It's I don't no. And you know what? Just like we saw during COVID, when they had the moratorium, judges were like, "We're not even touching it, man." And to evict somebody, one eviction that I had to do after COVID cost the organization between lost rent, court fees, attorney fees, serving paper. I mean, everything cost us between all that was close to $24,000, and there's no way to recoup it. And the thing is about it, after we finally got the eviction, and I go in there, and we're because of course they destroyed the place. We found drug paraphernalia, baggies with residue in them, bowls, and used of all sorts of things, and it was like little kids living there. So I'm sorry. Sometimes having to move somebody is a good thing, especially when it's not the landlord going back. But listen, if I buy property, right, I'm not buying property out of the goodness of my heart so someone else can have a beautiful free place to live. No one does that. Another study, New York City rent control study. A study led by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that rent controlled units in New York City were less well maintained than non rent controlled issues. Another study, evidence from Cambridge, Massachusetts, I believe. When rent control laws were repealed in Cambridge, Massachusetts, housing investment surged. Property values increased by 25% over 10 years. I mean, hey, Economist census in 2012 showed that a study of economists conducted by the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business found that 81% of respondents agreed that rent control policies like good cause evictions, they reduce the quality of available housing. Duh, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Next Step Show, 343,000, right? 92.1 FM, 95.5 West FM. No te olvides, 1040 AM, all powerful AM, and catch us all day, every day, anywhere. WYSL 1040.com. Regresamos en unos momentos. Pick up that phone, give me a call. Yep. Check this out. In the United States alone, 1 in 8 women, that's approximately 13%, will develop evasive breast cancer over the course of their lifetime. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Please be aware. The Mike, thank you for calling the Next Step Show. Yeah. Mhm. It is very much so. And Mike, I want to be very particular in saying that there are great tenants out there and there are great landlords out there. But you hit the nail on the head when you said, a lot of these people, they don't pay for it. They don't pay for anything. I know of a place in Colorado, I believe it was. The rent for everyone at this apartment complex was about $25. The rest was subsidized, right? Just a few weeks ago, there were 3 murders in there, and people are now talking about how this is, or coming from that article, that's like a way of life. That's what they have to accept. And Mike, tell me, don't you see that across the board? Yeah, right. Yes, or the government, because they're pushing the big corporations out too. Mike, I appreciate the call, sir. I'm sorry we got a couple more calls coming up, but I'll tell you, he is 100% correct. But check this out though. In Monroe County, approximately 2,500 vacant properties in the city in 2000 and in 2023. Is that the landlord's fault that caused that, or maybe these policies? Keith, thank you for calling the Next Step Show. Yeah. And that's 100% correct, Keith. I mean, they do. There's a handful of landlords, and then that are bad apples, and then of course you've got the politicians that are take. Keith, thank you for your call, Keith. In case you didn't know, though, it is really difficult, and a landlord has to be really careful with what they use and find in a background check. So, for example, if I'm renting to someone, I cannot hold the fact that they owe another landlord tenant or were evicted against them, nor can I do research to find out or get a background to find out whether they did that or not. Letitia, thank you for calling the Next Step Show. Oh, yeah. Well, this. I'm sorry, I missed the last thing you said. Well, that's what happens when you have big government. And interesting, you brought up the taxes, because I do believe on like a flat tax, or like if I mean, what let's say 3%, right? Because your 3% and my 3% may not be the same based on the income that we worked, but it allows us both to work hard and plan for things. Letitia, I so appreciate your call, ma'am. I wish I had a little bit more time to converse with you. Please call back. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, approximately 49% of renters in Monroe County by the state are considered rent burdened, meaning that they spend more than 30% on their rent. Dan, thank you for calling the Next Step Show. Mm-hmm. Oh, me too. Absolutely. Dan, thank you for the call. We got to go to break. I truly appreciate all the callers. 346-3000. Leave us a message on social media. We'll be right back right here on the Next Step Show on all WYSL stations, especially the AM Powerhouse at 10:40. Okay. Welcome back to the Next Step Show, ladies and gentlemen. See, and our sponsors, Ryan Murphy and Associates, Real Estate Appraisals. You need your property appraised, give them a call. They're great at what they do. RYNNE Murphy and Associates. See, Rock Auto Service over on Ridge Road West, right near the Mount Reed, the Mount Reed exit, owned by a veteran. Flower City Collision, Fender Bender, call them up. They'll straighten you out. See, that's also owned by a veteran, owned by Greg Sadwick and his son, I believe. And check it out. Greg Sadwick running for Congress. So, hey, 346-3000. We've got a few minutes left if you have something else to share. But though, I mean, I have to give props where props are due. And I would like your opinion. If not today, maybe even tomorrow, you can tell me what you think. But Mayor Malik Evans here in the city of Rochester created the Housing Quality Task Force, which was an initiative created to address housing qualities and issues, housing quality issues in Rochester. Boy, I need more coffee or less coffee. The whole focus of this is to deal with the city's ongoing challenges with substandard housing and slumlords. Now, remember, I said there's approximately 2,500 vacant properties in the city in 2023, right? Rochester struggles with abandoned properties and poorly maintained vacant properties. And I kind of asked a little bit, that might have something to do with how difficult it's becoming to be a landlord, a good landlord in the city of Rochester. So this task force, right? Unlike the good cause evictions, where this one size fits all. Although, again, when politicians run something, it always works so long as you're part of the mantra. So long as you agree and you're willing to go and carry their torch, right? You're not considered a targeted bad actor, because that is politics. We see it all the time. But this is, I think, way better, right? So this task force emphasizes that slumlords are a small but significant part of the housing problem. Did I not say that? Right? Because again, you got to give props where props is due. Malik knows his city. He grew up there just like I did. I know my city, right? I know my county. I can tell you that this whole crime issue that they're saying, well, it's gotten better, hasn't gotten better, just like the housing issue is not an exorbitant amount of landlords to the point where they have to make or try to change statewide laws, demonizing every single housing investor out there that wants to be a landlord, right? This initiative targets landlords that prioritize profit at the expense of maintaining safe and livable conditions. Okay. All right. We talk trickery. Safe and livable conditions. So I'll tell you, I am going to ask the mayor, why has he not targeted, right, the state-funded subsidized housings throughout the city and throughout some of the county, right? Because some of those are absolutely, right, not very safe or livable. Right there in the city of Rochester, subsidized housing. They put Band-Aids on things that use a whole lot of paint, but really, they want to crack down on these bad actors without penalizing landlords that follow the rules and invest in their properties. And that's a good thing, because that is where we have to be. Look, as long as whatever it is that we do addresses culture, let's get people to work, right? Let's get people to understand, because that, the more money you make, kind of like Letitia said, hey, listen, let's work hard. It's not an issue of being rich. It's an issue of achieving that comfort level in life, your version of the American dream. So I give him props for that. I absolutely, positively do. So, I figured we can talk a little bit about, I'll save that for next week. I talk a little bit about this strike on the East Coast with the port workers. And listen, if there's a need to strike, there's a need to strike. But I am wondering, and if there's anybody, I don't know how much time we have. If not today, tomorrow morning, give me a call. But it's my understanding that as this hocus pocus prepares our state for the strike against the East Coast port workers, that maybe we can take a closer look at this and say, gee, what's going on? And maybe, because I understand that the buffoon does have, he probably doesn't know what's going on, does have the opportunity to maybe even put a stop to this. But the only thing that's causing this group to go to what is that? Caramba, to go on strike, is that they want 100% guaranteed ban on all automation. Anything that automates the work for port employees is what they want to get rid of. So the company offered a 50% pay increase, substantial 50%. And they offered better benefits and everything else. So my question, because the company's like, hold up, right? You want us to do that. However, the problem with that is this automation makes us a little bit more profitable so that we can afford these things that we're offering you. I gotta ask, what do people think is going to happen when the cost of keeping you on board supersedes the income that organization is making? I mean, look at McDonald's. I used to buy 25-cent cheeseburgers. Now they're $1.89 or higher in some places. McDonald's, and they're experimenting throughout the country, have already gone fully automated. Most of the ones here locally paying that $15 minimum wage under the threat of a $20 minimum wage in the near future, like these politicians are saying, are putting more people out of business. Let's end the show on something that we should all be aware of, which is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Right, ladies and gentlemen, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men in the United States of America today have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. There is an estimated 30% of women who have faced physical and sexual abuse by intimate relations globally. In the US, more than 10 million adults experience domestic violence annually. That's 20 people per minute are getting their tushies beat by somebody who at one point said, I love you. And if that isn't enough, right, to jerk your chain and say, I need to be aware, I need to be involved, I need to make sure that I'm supporting and helping and donating to organizations. Look, the studies show children are 50 more that see this violence are 50 more percent to become victims and predators themselves. And check it out, 5 million children a year see domestic violence. Ladies and gentlemen, be a leader, be a leader, be a leader, and check it out. Leadership is the beacon that guides us, for it's through selfless service that I illuminate the way for others to find their own greatness. Y nunca te olvides, WYSL, La Voz de Libertad, your conservative New Rican, Peter Vasquez, siempre, siempre te amamos. Likewise, those on social media, thank you for staying with us.